I want you out of this house. What? Besides, I already have a potential new wife for him. My mother-in-law had not changed at all. On the contrary, she had made an outrageous plan. With a look of triumph on her face, she said, "You incompetent wife! Get her divorce!" At this point, something snapped inside me. "You will regret saying that." "What? Regret? Why? Ha ha!" "Because this house. My name is Kelly, 34 years old, and after I graduated from college, I got a job in a big company as an engineer. Since then, I have worked very hard at my job. It was during this time that I met Tommy, who would later become my husband when I was 28 years old. I met him through work. He was a salesman and often came to the company where I was working. He had always been kind to me, and he would smile and greet me kindly, even though I had nothing to do with the transaction directly. It was at the drinking party of the company that I got closer to him. The person in charge of working with the company my husband was in liked him a great deal, and when we greeted each other, he also left a good impression. So the person in charge invited him to come over. That was the first time I spoke with him, and we hit it off when we discovered that we had similar interests and tastes. We exchanged our contact information and started dating. And 2 years after we started dating, we got married. We have been in love since the beginning of our marriage, and we are still a very close couple. My husband has been my rock and has supported me when I made big decisions. That was when I started my own business. I was wondering if I should quit my job and work as a freelance engineer. Then my husband said to me,
You kind of want to do it. That's why you are feeling bothered, right? If that's the case, you should give it a try.
I'm the type of person who is cautious and isn't too adventurous. But I don't know if I will be able to earn a steady income or if I will be able to take any vacation. I was thinking of all the disadvantages and I was afraid to take a chance on a new job. I was hesitant because of all the disadvantages that come to mind.
Don't worry. I will support you even if you don't earn more. So just go ahead and take the plunge.
My husband told me that. So I resigned from my job and started working as a freelance engineer. My work increased more than I had expected. It seems that my experience working for a major company has made me trustworthy. So I'm now entrusted with many large projects, and my income is now incomparable to what it used to be. My husband and I were very happy to see our savings increase. For my part, I'm happy about the increase in income, but I was even happier that my husband encouraged and supported me. I felt that with him, I could overcome any difficulties and take on new challenges. These days, we travel and go on a drive together when my husband has time off. And of course, we still save money as usual, but still, we are able to splurge without worrying about money, and we are having a good time as a couple. Then one day, while working at home, I became somewhat sick. It didn't get better after a few days, so I went to the hospital for a checkup. And to my surprise, I found out that I was pregnant. I went home and waited anxiously for my husband to return home. That evening, I immediately told it to him when he got back from work. "Tommy, I went to the hospital today."
Oh, I see. I'm sorry I couldn't follow you there. So, how did it go?
My husband is hanging his suit jacket on a hanger as he speaks. I chuckled lightly and said, "They told me I was pregnant." My husband stopped hanging the suit in the closet and looked at me.
What? Seriously?
"Yes." With a big smile on his face, my husband said,
Really? We did it! Thank you, Kelly.
I was happy that my husband was overjoyed. I was also looking forward to the birth of a child with my beloved husband. We are going to do our best together from now on, aren't we?
Yes, we will take good care of our child together.
As we began to eat the dinner I had prepared, my husband continued to talk happily about the child. We started talking about the baby's gender and baby items. If it's a boy, he wants to play catch. If it's a girl, he wants to play house. Then I told my husband what I had been thinking for a while. If you like, why don't we build a house soon?
What?
We have a lot of money saved up, and if we have a baby, the room we have now will be too small. I thought it might be a good time to buy a house. If we buy a house, the kids can run around in it as much as they want.
Yes, and we'll have a room for the kids.
And I will have a new room for my work.
I like it. It's very dreamy. We'll have a beautiful and spacious house for our newborn child.
We decided to build a new house. On Saturdays and Sundays, we would go to an open house, work together on the floor plan, etc. We hurriedly made plans to have the house completed by the time the baby was born. About a month after we found out that I was pregnant, my husband and I went to my parents-in-law's house to report my pregnancy. But I was a little depressed. I was not very fond of my mother-in-law. My parents-in-law's house is about 30 minutes away by car, but I have not visited my in-laws that often. When we were first married, I visited my in-laws during Thanksgiving and New Year's, but during those occasions, she'd bully me. She would tell me how women are too focused on their jobs, and whenever I saw her, she would ask me when I was going to have grandchildren. She also complained about my work. All you do is just sit around on your computer, don't you? I don't like you because you're kind of a nerd. That means you're not a social butterfly, right? Tommy is a very communicator as a salesman, but his wife is like this. It's not that I have poor communication skills. It's just that I'm good at computers and I like them, which is why I have this job. My mother-in-law has a lot of heartless words for me, but that is only when we were alone together. When my husband and father-in-law are around, she puts on a mask. I was horrified each time and became bitter towards my mother-in-law. I gradually began to avoid her and visited her less and less. But this time, since it was to share the news of the birth of my child, I couldn't not go. Besides, she had been asking me if I had any children yet. She would be happy to hear about this, right? As I was feeling anxiety and expectation, my husband drove me to my in-laws' house. My mother-in-law, whom I had not seen in a long time, greeted me with a blank expression as usual. But when my husband spoke to her and said,
"Mom, it's been a long time,"
she immediately began to smile. She changed her tone of voice and began to talk happily. "Tommy, it's been a long time. I hope you've been well too, Kelly." "Oh yes, I've been fine." "Really? I'm glad to hear that. Come on, both of you." My mother-in-law invited us in. When we went up to the living room, my father-in-law greeted us happily, saying,
"Oh, you have come a long way."
I was going to sit on the living room sofa with my husband to talk with my father-in-law, but my mother-in-law asked me to help serve tea. I went to the kitchen where she was, though I felt bad inside. Sure enough, my mother-in-law looked at me coldly and said some heartless words. "I haven't seen irritating face in a long time. I wonder if you are still doing the same lowly job you have been doing. I hear you are going to continue working even after the birth of your child. I hope you are not going to say something stupid like that." My mother-in-law mistreated me like that. But when I went to the living room to serve tea with her, in front of my husband and father-in-law, she would instantly smile and start acting like a good mother-in-law. And when my husband told her that I was pregnant, my mother-in-law told me something that was not really in her heart. "I'm so happy. Thank you, Kelly. I can't wait to see my grandchild's face. You're a really good daughter-in-law. Haha, thank you. My mother-in-law's blatant change in attitude bewildered me, but I had no choice but to wear a fake smile to match. We've already told them about my pregnancy, so I wanted to get the hell out of there. I just had to get through the conversation by giving appropriate responses. However, something unexpected happened during the conversation. It all started with a casual remark from my father-in-law.
Won't your current room be a little small when you have a baby?
My husband happily said something about building a house. Then, my mother-in-law took a bite out of that. What? You're building a house? My mother-in-law said happily. I have a bad feeling about this. Then, my mother-in-law made a surprising remark. Then let's make it a two-family house. What?
What are you talking about, Mother?
My husband and I were taken aback, but my mother-in-law continued to talk, paying no attention to our reaction. Since this house is getting old anyways, we were talking about renovating it soon or selling it and living in another house. If we make it a two-family house, we can support Kelly during her pregnancy, and we can live with our grandchildren too. Don't you think so too, honey? My father-in-law was puzzled by my mother-in-law's comment.
Well, it sure would be nice to be able to live with my grandchildren, wouldn't it?
Then my mother-in-law, as if she had an ally on her side, said, Right, right. It's not easy when you have a baby. Because you're planning to work after the baby is born, right, Kelly? Then, wouldn't it be reassuring if I were there to help with the housework and child rearing? My mother-in-law said with a forward look on her face, and encouraged us to build a two-family house. The pressure was so great that I flinched. But my husband said,
Well, it's important, so let us think about it. Well, now that we've told you about the pregnancy, it's time for us to go home.
I was surprised that my mother-in-law was so excited, but I was relieved to hear that she was happy about the birth of our child. However, I honestly feel that it would be difficult to live together in the same household. After all, I still don't trust her, considering the way she has been snubbing me. However, since then, my mother-in-law seems to have stopped harassing me. On the contrary, she regularly sends me emails expressing concern for my health. She also replies to me with kind text and doesn't say anything unnecessary. I wondered if my mother-in-law had changed her mind. I tried visiting my in-laws during Thanksgiving for the first time in a long time, and they were extremely kind. Even when we were alone, she didn't bully me. After that, she would regularly send me texts with kind words. I had let my guard down because my mother-in-law had become so kind to me. Then, my husband asked me about living together with them. He wanted to make sure the house would be ready soon after our daughter was born. The deadline was surprisingly early, so we have to decide now what to do with the house. I've been working with my mother-in-law, who was becoming much kinder to me. I was beginning to think that living in the same house with them would be fine. And I certainly appreciate my mother-in-law's help with housework and childcare. I can ask her to take care of my child when I want to concentrate on my work. Let's just go ahead and build a two-family house. My husband was surprised when I said so.
Is that really a good idea? Because you don't like my mom, right?
What?
I don't know. I just don't think you and Mom have ever really got along.
I thought my husband was watching me very carefully. I'm sure there was a part of me that didn't like her, but lately she has been very kind to me, and I thought we could get along now.
Thank you for saying that. I'm glad you care about my parents. You're right. My mother can be a bit of a pain in the butt, but I'm sure she would take good care of the kids.
Thus, we went to the construction company that we had originally hired and told them that we wanted to change to a two-family house. Since we had already decided on the floor plan to some extent, We decided to expand the rooms based on that. The arrangement for the new house went smoothly, and we even visited the construction company with my in-laws. I thought it was going to be quite lively with the birth of our child. I was excited that it was going to be fun. A few months passed, and I was about to enter the last trimester of my pregnancy when construction started. I was also very happy to see my in-laws cheering for me. So our new life is finally starting. A few months later, I successfully gave birth. A healthy baby girl was born. My husband and in-laws were delighted with the birth of our daughter, and all we had to do was wait for the house to be built. Finally, the new house was completed. My husband and I took our daughter to the new house. It seems that my parents-in-law arrived just at the same time, so we entered the house excitedly. The new house was so beautiful and spacious that just walking around it gave a sense of happiness. My husband and father-in-law were both happy to be in their own rooms. Then, I was called by my mother-in-law. "Come over here for a minute, Kelly." I thought my mother-in-law was at their house, but for some reason she was at our house. I went to the kitchen as she called me. "What's wrong, Gemma?" "I can finally tell you. I want you to get out of this house." "Huh?" I couldn't catch up with my understanding because it was so sudden. As I froze, my mother-in-law continued talking, looking at me with the same disdain she had in the past. "I didn't want to be nice to you, but I dared to be nice to you because Tommy was building me a house. It's been really tough these past 6 months, but now all my hard work has paid off." "What do you mean?" When I managed to squeeze my voice to ask, my mother-in-law sniffed and continued. "I've never liked you in the first place. You never quit your job, and when you finally had a child, it's a girl." "Yeah, but you said you'd help me with the housework and child-rearing." "That's a lie. It's a lie. It's a lie to get Tommy to do what I want. But now that the house is built, you're no longer needed. Now divorce Tommy." Then my mother-in-law said something even more surprising. "And I already have a potential new wife for him." "What?" "She's the daughter of an acquaintance of mine. She wants to be a housewife. So I'm thinking of taking her in and making her Tommy's wife in this house." "No way." I was absolutely stunned. My mother-in-law had not changed at all. On the contrary, she had made an outrageous plan. My mother-in-law had a look of triumph on her face as she said, "You incompetent wife, get a divorce, and get out of here right now." At that moment, something snapped inside me. There was no more forgiveness for this woman. "You will regret saying that, you know." "What? Regret? Why?" "Ha ha." "Because this house—" When I was about to say that, my husband came over to me.
"Hey, Mom, I heard what you just said. What do you mean you're kicking Kelly out, or I will have a new wife? Don't go around saying weird things like that and getting us in trouble."
When my husband said that, my mother-in-law was momentarily upset that she had been overheard, but resumed the topic. "I'm only saying this for your own good. I don't need this wimpy woman living in your house. Get a new wife who is young and can give birth to a boy." My husband turned pale and confronted my mother-in-law.
"What? Don't you know?"
"What are you talking about?"
"Kelly built this house, remember? That's why the house is in Kelly's name."
"Huh?" My mother-in-law rolled her eyes and froze. "That's such a lie, isn't it?" My husband told my mother-in-law in disgust.
"I've told you about this before, right? Kelly's income had gone up since she became a freelancer."
"I'm sure I have heard you say something like that before. What do you mean she makes enough to buy a house?"
"Kelly is a very good engineer. That's why she's taking on big companies as an independent contractor. When you take on a client as an independent contractor, you get all the money, so you can make a lot. She earns about 10 times more than I do.
Huh? 10 times?
Can I say it?
I shook my head as he asked me that.
She makes about 3 million a month.
Oh no! My mother-in-law had no idea that I was making that much money, so she was quite surprised and was shocked. Then my father-in-law arrived at the same time.
You weren't over there, so I wondered where you went, and thought you might be at Tommy's. What are you doing here, by the way?
My husband told my father-in-law exactly what she had said to me earlier. His face turned red.
So you were talking to Kelly like that? You have done such a shameful thing bullying her.
My mother-in-law was completely freaked out by my father-in-law's angry voice.
Kelly, please be honest with me. Has my wife been mistreating you ever since?
My father-in-law asked me that, so I told him everything honestly. That she had been bullying me from the beginning of my marriage, and that she had been extremely kind to me only when we were building the house. He glared at her.
I'm already disappointed in you. I'm divorcing you.
What?
I don't want to be with a woman who can't take care of the person who is important to her son. If I'm going to retire, the person I will see all the time will be you. I'm going to be miserable in my old age. You're the one who is leaving. I'm divorcing you right now.
No way! My mother-in-law couldn't stand up, so she cowered and cried. But no one was on her side. And so my husband forced her to get up and get into my father-in-law's car. My father-in-law apologized to me and went back to their house. It seems that their house had already been put up for sale, but he had put the move-out date a week ahead of time in case something happened. So in the meantime, he served my mother-in-law with divorce papers and moved into our duplex. At first, Dean said he'd stop living there out of reservation, but we didn't have any bad impression of him, so we proposed that he move in with us since we had already built the house. My mother-in-law was kicked out of her house with no job and no one to rely on, so she moved into a cheap, shabby apartment. The marriage of her acquaintance's daughter and my husband was also cancelled. On top of being untrustworthy, she also tried to introduce a married man, so she was seen as a bad person and lost all the people around her in an instant. I don't know what she has done since then, but I'm sure she is leading a miserable life. On the other hand, our family of 4 is getting along very well. My father-in-law and husband love my daughter very much, and so an aura of happiness spreads through our house every day. I think we will continue to live happily together as a family, supporting each other.